Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man ihtada bihudahu ila yawmuddin. Abad. All praises belong to the Almighty Allah. May His peace and blessings be upon the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his household, the followers, and all those who follow the path of Allah to the day of judgment. Welcome all of you to day 12 of the great month of Ramadan, and to share with you thoughts on how to get a taqwa. This brings us to step 3 in respect of the methods that one has to use to get a taqwa. We have already dealt with reflection on Allah's power and reflection on man, but the main theme there is reflection. And then number 2, fasting itself and how it helps the spirit to get elevated. This afternoon, we are looking at the all-important subject, which is number 3, all-important subject of reflecting on the Quran to gain a taqwa. The Quran as a book is a book of hope, is a book of enlightenment, and it's a book of empowerment. And when I speak of empowerment, I'm talking of spiritual empowerment, mental empowerment, and physical empowerment. Just reflect upon how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this book in Quran chapter 2. Alif Lam Mim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alif Lam Mim. Allah is swearing with the letters Alif, Lam, and Mim. And the second verse states, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That book, and the use of the demonstrative pronoun that indicates that it is a book of truth that is known by all, except the one who decides not to accept the truth. So Allah said, that book, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, which doesn't have any element of ambiguity or doubt. It is a book of total truth. Hudan lil-muttaqeen, a guidance for those who fear Allah. It is a book for reflection. And anyone who wants to benefit from the book has no choice but to reflect upon it. Because lessons therein, that is in the book, could only be attained. For it to have the needed impact on the spirit, mind, and body can only happen through reflection. Let us reflect on the words of Allah in Quran chapter 38 verse 29. Allah states, Kitabun anzalnahu ilayk. This is a book we have revealed to you. Mubarakun, well blessed, fully blessed. لِيَدَبَّرُوا آيَاتِهِ, so that they reflect on its verses and contents and text. وَلِيَتَذَكَّرَ أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, so that men of wisdom, women of wisdom will pick lessons from the content of the book. Still on reflecting the book, in Quran chapter 4 verse 82, Allah says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ لَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا. Don't they reflect on the content of the book? If the book had come from a source different from Allah, you would have found in it contradictions. And still, on reflection, in Surah Muhammad, Quran chapter 47, verse 24, Allah poses the question: أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها? Wouldn't they reflect on the Quran, the content of the book, what it contains, the book contains? Wouldn't they reflect on those things? Or they have padlocks on their minds? The implication here is that any believer who takes to the exercise of reflecting on the Quran will see wonders in his inner self, will see wonders in his outer self. What it means is that it's not just a book for reading like the way a parrot will read. It is a book for deep thinking. And that deep thinking, in my personal experience, the best time to do proper thinking and reflection, deep thinking and reflection upon the Quran is when the whole world is asleep. Around 1 a.m., around 2 a.m., around 3 a.m., and I call that place, that period, the last 1/3 part of the night. It's a period of serenity. The world is calm. Everybody is asleep. And the Prophet asked the Sahaba, do I teach you something that if you do, you enter Jannah without any accountability? And the followers responded, Allahu wa Rasuluhu a'lam. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his beloved messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam know better. And the Prophet said, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Sallu wa nasu niyam. That sleep, no, Sallu wa nasu niyam. The prayer to Allah when people are asleep. That is the best time for submission. That is the best time for supplication. That is the best time for prayer. And therefore that is the best time for reading the Quran and reflecting upon it. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran chapter 17 directed the Prophet in the following manner: وَمِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَتَهَجَّدْ بِهِ نَافِلَةً لَكَ عَسَى أَنْ يَبْعَثَكَ رَبُّكَ مَقَامًا مَحْمُودًا. That a part of the night, totally submit and pray to your Lord. نَافِلَةً لَكَ, voluntarily for yourself. And of course, voluntarily for your followers. عَسَى أَنْ يَبْعَثَكَ رَبُّكَ مَقَامًا مَحْمُودًا, so that your Lord will lift you up, elevate you to a praiseworthy position. That is why Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah is of the view that for a Muslim to get his iman strengthened, for a Muslim to get purification of self, for a Muslim to get enlightenment in his mind, spirit and body, and of course empowerment, the great Imam is of the view that the Muslim, the believer, should have time for submission, should have time for reading of the Quran, should have time for reflection upon the Quran at those odd times. And the Prophet describes in another hadith that those odd times belong to the third part of the night. the time that the rahmah of Allah is very close to his servant, his forgiveness is very close to his servant, he's elevating his servant to a unique position. It's around that time. Consequently, we suggest very strongly that you find time in this great month. You wake up around 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Then you pray to Allah. You perform your nawafil. Then you sit down quietly reading the Quran and quietly reflecting on the meanings of the book. And by extension, and in terms of relationship between the Quran and the servant of Allah, that relationship takes 4 forms. For one, to gain taqwa and win closeness to the Almighty. The relationship between the Muslim and the Quran is 4-fold. Relationship number one is reading of the Quran, and the blessings therein cannot be imagined. In one of the posts I indicated that the Prophet told Ibn Mas'ud that if you read one word of the Quran, each letter in that word brings 10 blessings to the reader. And the Prophet said, Alif Ashara, Lam Ashara, Mim Ashara. That is Alif 10 blessings, Lam 10 blessings, and Mim 10 blessings. Amazing. So the first relationship between the Muslim is reading of the Quran. I have to state with all sadness that a lot of Muslims only become friends of the Quran. They interact with the Quran only in the month of Ramadan. Just take the scenario of the man, the Muslim, who 2 days to Ramadan, because over the whole year he never read the Quran. The Quran is covered by dust. So he calls the wife, Fatih, could you humbly clean up my Quran for me? Ramadan is coming. Allahu Akbar. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to in Surah Yasin. Ya hasratan ala al-ibad. These are people who have failed. The Quran is a book for all the 365 days of the Gregorian calendar and the 355 days of the lunar calendar of Islam. It is a book that has to be read in the morning and in the evening. But we are talking about it in a special way this time around. Apart from our reading it in the morning and even before we sleep, we should find time, 2 a.m., and reflect on the content of the book. Relationship number 2. As we reflect on the contents of the book, we read it and we reflect. So we are going to understand it better. We get better understanding of the content of the book. The third relationship is that when we understand the content of the book, the third relationship is that we apply it to our lives. If Allah says zina is haram, we run away from it. If Allah says lies telling is haram, we run away from it. If Allah says cheating is haram, we run away from it. If Allah says undermining one another, envying one another is haram, we run away from it, because all these ill vices are deduced from the content of the book. And if Allah encourages us to be kind to others, and more especially in this month, and then beyond it, we have to take to it. If Allah talks about brotherly love, we have to love one another, because that is the source of power for the Muslim Ummah. If Allah talks about our loving our wives, we have to love them with all our hearts. If you have 2, 3 or 4, watch, don't be a hypocrite. Take care of yourself, don't be a hypocrite. If you know you cannot maintain justice, please keep to 1 and take very good care of her. Because polygamy is not a license for abuse. You have to be very careful. If you know you don't have the spirit of justice to maintain justice among your wives, please take to only 1 and save yourself from the torment of the hellfire. Finally, this deen is not to be kept to ourselves. We are supposed to share what we have understood with others. The Prophet of Islam was instructed in the latter part of Surah Yusuf, Quran chapter 12. Allah says, Kul hadhihi sabili, say, this is my way. Adur ila Allahi ala basira, I invite all to the way of Allah through wisdom and spiritual light. I Muhammad, wa man ittaba'ani, and all those who follow me. So if we follow the Prophet of Allah, then our duty is to spread Islam using our resources, using our mouth, using our energies, using every position the Almighty has given us in this world to spread this wonderful religion of Allah. And it is for this purpose we are here. If dawah, spreading Islam, is not in your life, it's not in my life, then we have lost the game of life. The true essence of life is to live for Allah and die for Him. May He strengthen us to have the needed iman in Ramadan and after it, to live and die for Him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all your steps, protect all your steps. May He grant you the compassion to be very kind to His servants, so that He also be kind to you and to my poor self. I wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.